Hello and welcome to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken and I'm reunited with my usual co-host and friend, Brian Dick. Hi Brian, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Sorry for everyone for the radio silence. Alice, good start, isn't it? Alex has had the temerity to have some time off, and we've had a couple of other things that have eaten into our schedule. So apologies for that. But we're back, as Alex says, reunited and fresh, if not a little melted, from our experience with Chris Davies in the open training session today.
Yeah, we knew it was time. We had people moaning to us on Twitter that where's the latest podcast? So we're back, and we hope it's going to be a good one because, like Brian says, we have been down to the training ground this morning, early afternoon. We're down there for probably about 3 hours by the time it was all said and done. Watching Chris Davies put on a session, we were only supposed to watch a little bit of it, but we ended up kind of circling round and watching probably more than we were supposed to or scheduled to. But Chris Davies very open and honest about what they were doing today. You know, he came over at the start of the session, didn't he, Brian? I think this is quite an interesting point. Came over to us just as we all walked out onto the grass and presented us with a piece of paper where he kind of showed us exactly what they're going to be doing. He wasn't hiding anything. He had, even his key messages, down to his key messages as what he was going to kind of reinforce during that session. He'd obviously broken it into 4 separate points. Brian, take it away, because I don't think either of us have ever really had a manager come over. We've watched training sessions, but never had a manager actually detail like that what they're going to do in that particular session.
No, as I said at the time, I can count on one finger the number of times that's happened. So, I've been behind the scenes watching Gary Rowett's train. Never got to see Zola, and bizarrely.
Surprised by that one, Brian.
Training session, yeah. Never, but all the Blues managers right up to I didn't see Rooney or Mowbray, but everyone in between. Seen training sessions either on tour or in open days that clubs inevitably put on at this stage of the season. And Chris Davies is the only one to come up and open a plastic folder. To show us the 4 elements that they were going to be working on. It was an hour-long session, maybe an hour and 20, something like that, and they were all split into blocks, 20-minute blocks of what they would be working on. And the bit we saw, I think I'm right in saying, was building out from the back, wasn't it? So
unopposed,
unopposed possession into attack, and you really can see what every player is supposed to do, can't you? So, it was very, very illuminating. It just makes you realise how little you don't know about football. I mean, that's pointed out to me, most times I go on social media, to be fair. But just the level of detail as to which player, what player is supposed to do in any one of a million situations. It's all planned out. So, yeah, absolutely just intriguing to sort of peek behind the curtain that way.
Yeah, it's crazy how they take all the information on board, isn't it? That bit of the session we watched was interesting because you see all the little patterns of play, don't you? Like how they're working the ball through the thirds. You see different things they're working on, whether Ethan Laird gets the ball and immediately looks to switch it over to the left-hand side, where today I think on his side it was Brandon Keeler who was at left back, or whether he plays a little 1-2 with Koji Miosi and works his way down the right. It's all kind of obviously very simple stuff, but it's developing those kind of relationships and patterns without opposition, so they can then go and do it with opposition. And I think in the third part of the session, was it that they had the opposition to kind of go against and put it into practice.
You say unopposed. So what happens was the goalkeepers would start with the ball. There was a team in either half, so obviously 2 balls, one at either end of the pitch. The team would sort of start off in I suppose you'd say kick-off formation, and then they'd all sprint back, like the whole team, even the strikers would all sprint back into position towards the goalkeeper, take the ball off the goalkeeper. So effectively you had 2 teams sort of playing towards each other and then through each other up to the opposite end. I mean, how someone didn't crash in or blindside somebody else. But I think what we will see from that is we'll see when there's Blues are out of possession or there's a turnover or a goal kick or something like that, everyone will sprint back towards whoever's in goal, whether it's Allsop or Bailey Peacock Farrell, and and I mean sprint. I don't mean sort of amble back into shape. They tear into position, don't they? And then when the ball comes out, they've got these sort of predetermined or the passes or a couple of options that they'll look for, and they work their way through the thirds that way. As I say, the detail is mind blowing.
Yeah, I do want to give a little shout out to Josh Home, because towards the end of the session, he was kind of drafted in as 23rd man, wasn't he? And he was put in a little box and received the ball from the goalkeeper. And within a second, 5 attackers had swarmed on him to press him. And he had absolutely no chance of getting out. And he did it for both teams. And it's clearly just a, part of the session. But someone had to do it. It wasn't pleasant to watch because they were like vultures on him. But yeah, fair play to him. And we did mention actually about the youngsters that Chris Davies has kept around. They're all good characters, aren't they? We've spoken to some of them over various points and got to know bits from speaking to people at the club. And the 4 or 5 that are still in the group, in the first team group, all of them have been tested in various ways this pre-season. Brandon Keeler's played about 6 different positions and not moaned once. Josh Holmes been 23rd man today and been pressed to within an inch of his life by players. Probably not just a learning experience for him, but they're really good characters. So that's probably telling. Chris Davies talks a lot about wanting to win with good people. So yeah, they're proving themselves that way to him.
Yeah, indeed. Tommy Fogarty was another one on show, wasn't he? Absolutely. Couple of things stood out for me. Listen, it was a 20-minute exercise with no opposition, so everyone's going to look good, aren't they? But Marc Leonard's range of passing. He sort of takes the ball off one of the fullbacks or one of the centre backs into midfield, gets turned, and I think we'll quite often see him hit a diagonal, won't we, to either wing, and the the weight of his passing was really quite impressive. Again, unopposed. Let's not go over the top. And the other thing that stuck out, it was Siriki Dembele in a nutshell. I so want to cash out Siriki Dembele, and just go. Hasn't worked. Great ability, but it's not worked for Blues. And then there's one thing, isn't there? Every time you see him, that you just think, well, that's what it is. That's why. That's what they're trying to unlock. And today, I think it's probably fair to say some of the players had missed some absolute sitters one-on-ones, hadn't they? Against the goalkeeper. One of the drills, ball reaches Dembele. I think it was from a Leonard diagonal. Kills it. I mean, it looks like it's sailing miles out, doesn't it? He kills it right on the touchline, brings it in, and curls it off the inside of the foot of the post. And that is the Siriki Dembele talent that we've all seen. So you can see. I mean, we might come onto it in a bit, but you can see why he's still there, can't you? I mean, obviously we can see because he's a good player, but you just see he's maybe caught Chris Davies' eye. There
are always those players that good coaches think they can kind of coax something out of. Players who other managers might have given up on, and there were probably more than one manager last season that gave up on Siriki Dembele, but Chris Davies has clearly seen something in him to keep him around this long. And going into the Warsaw friendly last week, I don't think any of us expected him to start that game ahead of Emil Hansen, but Chris Davies clearly wanted to give him a proper chance to stake his claim because he knows how talented he is. So yeah, I'm sure we will come on to him later on in the podcast when we talk about individual players, but there were some, like you say, Brian, some really interesting points, probably more interesting points that we didn't get to see because obviously we moved away after the first 20 minutes, but it was really good to see Chris Davies in action again. And I think every time you watch him train, I think I've watched him twice now, and you speak to him as well. I've spoken to him a fair number of times in pre-season. You just get the impression that he has a solution for absolutely everything from a coaching point of view. His brain so detailed in how he analyses things, because obviously he's done that role in the past. How he sees the game is so clear, how he wants the team to play. And, it's the same messages that constantly get reinforced. But there was one actually really interesting. I don't want to steal your thunder because you asked the question. I want you to put it out there. But we've spoken a lot between us about, playing in League One. Blues are going to want to play great football. But what do you actually, the Blues are going to want to press, but what do you actually do if the opposition don't let you press them? And, you go on, Brian, because he came back with a really good answer to that question, didn't he?
Yeah, surprisingly, he thought of it. Yeah, and I hadn't thought of a chink in the armour. No, so as you said, just to lay the table a bit, and it was something that Harley Dean said. It's all very well playing a high pressing game, but what happens if centre back gets the ball and just lumps it over the top of the over the top of the entire team. They're therefore taking out the front six and putting the back four under pressure. Davis explained it and said that basically what will happen is that's when you look at your goalkeeper's starting position. So we're talking kind of a sweeper keeper scenario where if it's Peacock Farrell, his starting position will be very high. So anything over the top, he'll be onto. And also, it's about the defenders. If the ball does go over the heads, it's about the defenders and indeed the rest of the team turning and getting back into position really, really quickly. But there's certainly. I mean, obviously, he knew the answer. I don't know why I'm surprised about the fact he knew the answer, but it was just nice to have it explained to me, and you actually feel as though that he could have stood there for another half an hour and explained every little question that we'd have asked from a tactical point of view. I just like you, I've seen a lot of Blues managers coach and run sessions. I find him very, very, very plausible. And I think somebody said, the players are eating out of his hand. And I think they find him plausible as well. And I think they'll continue to find him plausible when what he's telling them actually happens in a live match. I mean, this is all with the caveat of they haven't played an opposition trying to do something different yet. But at the moment, it looks and it sounds really, really plausible.
Yeah, I always think the good coaches are quite happy for you to kind of watch and scrutinise their work because they have all the answers. And Chris Davies does strike me as someone who never shies away from any of the questions around it, and never feels like he doesn't have to explain himself to journalists and fans because he's quite happy to, because he knows that's his field of expertise, and he's very comfortable in it. We love Christian Bielik on this podcast, don't we, Brian? But speaking to Christian Bielik out in Austria, he's a football badger, isn't he? Let's be honest, he absolutely loves the game and all these kind of finer details, and he absolutely waxed lyrical about Chris Davies and the way he coaches and the way he sees things on the training ground in terms of seeing things differently. All the signs are incredibly positive. All the signs in pre-season since that Paderborn game have been really positive. The signings have come, a lot of good signings on paper in this league especially. So now I'm just really looking forward to seeing that first game and seeing how it all unfolds. I think everything suggests that Blues are going to be right up there. I'm not saying that they're going to be, a million miles clear, because there are other teams in this league that have spent money this summer. There are other teams that have probably been together a bit longer than Blues with good managers and will be able to mount a challenge. But, on and off the field at the moment, the club does seem to be heading in the right direction at last.
Totally. Yeah. Just go back on the point about asking managers questions about tactics or substitutions. Some get really prickly,
Oh, they do.
Properly prickly. I remember Steve Cottrell was unhappy, with a couple of questions I asked him about substitutions. Ita Karanka would never elaborate. I've previously heard some managers have sort of have this attitude of, you wouldn't understand, so I'm not even going to bother trying to explain it to you. So you are right. Someone who is comfortable to be questioned in that way, and he's polite and he treats it in good faith, doesn't he? Clearly, we're probably not using the right words or the right terminology, or asking a really basic question, which seems like absolute rocket science to us. But he's very courteous in the way he answers those. So where were you going before? I've forgotten what you said now.
I have no idea. I've forgotten. I was completely transfixed on what you were saying, Brian.
So after that session, after the bit of the session that we saw, we were shown round the Elite Performance and Innovation Centre, weren't we? And that was the first time I've seen behind the scenes at Henley. I know you've been there a lot and seen bits and bobs, but that was impressive, wasn't it? And what it smacked of to me was investment.
Yes, yeah.
Down to the sort of the tactics TV that Sky Sports use with their pens and all this sort of thing. Blues have got one of those now. And Chris Davies uses that. It's just investment everywhere, isn't there? Even down to the ground staff. Suddenly there's an army of them. Or, I'm not sure Dale would say the army's big enough, but there's more of them than we used to see on a much bigger site at Wast Hills. So investment is the big takeaway.
Yeah, I think on my first day in this job, which would have been around March time last year, I went there on my first day, and since that day, that was just about the time I moved in. Since that day, there's been about 4 makeovers to that site. Literally everything has changed. I was given a tour of it that day, and there was only 1 pitch. Now they've got 2 pitches. They're both the same spec as St Andrew's turf. They've got behind the main building, which they called it a warm-up area before. Honestly, it was a hill. Like it was on a slant. So now that's completely leveled off, and that's really good turf as well. Some of the goalkeepers do training around there, and they obviously still use it as a warm area for other things as well, to keep the other 2 main pitches fresh. They've done a really good job with the grass outside there. A lot of that, is out to the ground staff, but also Nick Smith, who probably doesn't get as much praise on this podcast as he should, because he's kind of a behind-the-scenes figure who deals with all the infrastructure stuff. But he's done a ridiculous job, and everyone I speak to at the club praises Nick Smith really highly. And I always say that he does make grass sound interesting. Whenever I listen to him talk about turf and stuff, actually I'm there like, oh my god, this is actually good stuff. But yeah, so much going on. You look inside the facility as well. We were showing a new recruitment suite where it's really plush. They can show prospective signings and show them around there. And it's just a way Chris Davies and Craig Gardner can impress new players. The gym, again, top class facility. Upstairs now they've got a massive new medical suite, which is plastered with Tom Brady branding and also inspirational quotes, I suppose. You've got motivational quotes on the walls. Brady's had a big influence on that side, as well as his, I think it was his body coach, Alex Guerrero. And to be fair, if somebody's competed at the level he has until the age of 45 or whatever it was, he'd probably wanted advice on that sort of stuff. So completely changed. They've transformed the place inside and out, even to having a new carpet which goes around the facility and takes people from different areas to the others. Very impressive place. Hard not to be impressed by everything that's going on at the club at the moment to us. And you mentioned that little Sky Sports TV that Chris Davies has got on the wall in the.
It's not little.
No, it's not little. Yeah. It makes the wall look little. Some massive screen which he can obviously use for touchscreen analysis, so he can show players clips and things quickly. We forget that he started out on that side of the game, didn't he? He was an analyst for the first 5 years, so he's clearly very comfortable doing that. And we're told that he actually does a lot of it himself and works with the analyst team to kind of put it on there and show the players. So another string to his bow. He seems to have all the boxes ticked, and that's very impressive. A lot going on at the club, and it all looks really good going into the new season.
Clips from training as well, not just clips from matches. Yeah. Literally, there is no hiding place. Is there now? Just crack the fitness suite door a little bit. Lee Buchanan and Alfie Chang were in there, weren't they? Buchanan was having a massage on his calf, and Chang looked to me as though he was doing strengthening exercises on his left leg. And you can certainly see where the dog's been chewing his knee, can't you? Really quick. Wish Alfie and Lee as well a real sort of quick recovery. They're both sort of in there working hard, and it can't be fun when it's a beautiful day and everyone else is outside. But yeah, as you say, impressive. After the tour of the facilities, we were given some interviews, weren't we? Alfie May, Marc, Leonard, and Chris Davies himself. Where do you want to start with those?
We'll start with Alfie May because we went first, didn't he? He's probably going to challenge Christian Bielik for the best talker in the squad. I think he's really open and honest. Gives great interviews. I've spoken to him twice now. Talked about a range of things there. One of the things that I took from it was a question about his targets for the forthcoming season, where he kind of said, "I don't really want to give my goal target away." But I saw a stat the other day, and the only person who has hit 4 20-goal seasons in League One is Billy Sharp. So I'd love to do that. So he's basically said there, and then he also said he wants to win the Golden Boot. So, but we could pretty safely assume that his target is to score 20 plus goals again for the 4th season in a row.
Score a bucket load of goals, yeah. You didn't actually have to pick at that, did you? You asked him about a personal target. He said, "I'm not telling you." Then told you. So yeah. He was really good value. A real bubbly, infectious character. I know he's talked before, about doing building work or and giving up football and that sort of thing. He's clearly, it just feels like he's living his best life at the moment, doesn't it? And yeah, first time I spoke to him, I was really engaged by him, and I was quietly impressed with Marc Leonard as well. Much younger. You don't get your hopes up often, do you, when you're speaking to a sort of a 21-year-old lad who's only ever been in a football academy, and you're not going to get stories about building houses or anything like this. But Marc Leonard was interesting as well.
Yeah, very. He's only 21, 22, isn't he? So, but he's been around a little bit. He's obviously had the last 2 loan spells at Northampton, so he's developed in that way, and very impressive in terms of the way he spoke. Really interesting that he, kind of touched on a few of the points that Chris Davies had made to him about how they want to play and things, and how that really kind of attracted him to the club. How the Northampton loan spell really helped him. What was the word he used for League Two? Carnage. Yeah. So that was one of the things I wanted to ask him, because you look at his League Two season with Northampton, and a player coming down from Brighton in the Premier League with his pedigree and play for Scotland at youth level, you'd expect him to do well, but he didn't do that well, even though he played most of the games. Whereas he's gone up to League One, and all of a sudden he's a real breakout star. He's played every single game, and his numbers have gone through the roof. And he's clearly, he's twigged in that second season at Northampton how he needs to play in that central midfield position. He said himself that a lot of the teams in League Two are more direct, and you don't get that as much in League One. I think he might find that a little bit more at Blues this season, because teams will inevitably change the way they play to play against Blues, because realistically, how many League One teams are going to be able to compete with Blues possession wise and on the ball? Blues have got players who've played for decent clubs in the Eredivisie last year. The law averages says they're going to have a better team than most of their rivals. So he'll probably find that he has to, probably muck in and play an aggressive game at times against League One midfields. But he seems quite willing to do that as well. He seems a really good character, and it doesn't surprise me, because Chris Davies is insisting on recruiting those types of people as well.
Yeah, it's a footballing trope, isn't it, that you look at the opposition and you say, well, are their players better than ours, or are our players better than them? If our players are better than theirs, then you try and play through them, you try and out-football them. If their players are better, then you try and out-battle them, don't you? And Leonard was interesting from that point of view, about saying, there will have to be some body on body and gutsing it out. And Davis spoke about that as well, but he spoke about it more in terms of, not just the physical duels as who's going to win that 50-50, but who's working the hardest to get back in shape or get back to cover, get back into the structure, whether that's with or without the ball. So, I was comforted today that people around in the first team and Davis leading the first team aren't just talking about playing a fancy way out of League One, that they are ready for the battles ahead. And inevitably, as we've been saying all summer, is Blues will come a cropper somewhere, won't they? They will get mugged somewhere. I asked Davis that. Is that the biggest fear of the players, being surprised by the intensity of an opponent one day? And he said no, because that comes down to the people you're bringing in. Rather than the player, it's the people that are coming in to do those essentials first. So yeah, which brings us on to Davis. And I suppose he was asked about transfers, wasn't he? Inevitably. What were the big takeaways for you from that?
We've only got a month left of transfers, Brian. Thank God. So yeah, I asked him quite directly about Jay Stansfield. It's no secret that Blues are interested in Jay Stansfield. I think right from the end of last season, it was obvious that, I think whoever's been manager of Blues in the last 6 months, first Mowbray, then when Rao was in charge, he briefly spoke about it as well. And now Chris Davies, it's no secret that Blues would love to bring Jay Stansfield back. I think I probably thought it was impossible at the end of last season. I think he probably did when he was crying at at least showed some tears at the end of season awards dinner after a clean sweep. But as the summer's gone on and Blues have become more ambitious in the market and they've signed some very good players and can clearly offer some very good money to players in League One. Now it's like it could happen again if Fulham are willing to sell. I think that's the big question mark at the moment, whether Fulham would be willing to sell him, because Marco Silva has spoken about giving Stansfield his chance in the Premier League because he did so well on loan in the Championship. They've obviously involved him in their pre-season plans and their pre-season tour. So I guess it's how much he impresses Marco Silva in the next 2 weeks. I don't think they'll be rushing to sell him. I think if Blues are going to sign Jay Stansfield, they'll have to wait. And Chris Davies, from asking that question, clearly isn't getting his hopes up too much. He said, yeah, we would be interested in him, but ultimately it does depend whether Fulham are willing to sell him and then whether they can do a deal, because he obviously knows there'll be Championship clubs also in for Jay Stansfield.
Yeah.
If he does become available, whether that's a loan or a permanent deal. Fulham might then say they want to loan him out again. If they want to loan him out again, I don't think Blues are going to be their answer, are they?
No. It was you that said he sort of completed League One a couple of seasons ago, didn't he? And he went some way to completing the Championship as well last season. So Fulham wouldn't be desperate to send Jay Stansfield back to League One. Absolutely not. If it's a loan, listen, it's worth remembering that Fulham have got an opinion on this. Blues have got an opinion on this. Jay Stansfield has got an opinion on this. Probably the people around and advising Jay Stansfield have got an opinion on what's best for his career as well. It is possible, isn't it? No one's saying it's not possible, but I'm still somewhere from thinking it's probable. I really am. And Blues might go and sign him tomorrow, and be holding the shirt on the tilt and whatever the cliche is, and we'll have egg on our faces. But it still feels like a long shot to me.
Yeah, it does, because it's one thing, being happy to, thinking, I could just play in League One for a season, but then it's another thing actually doing it when there are Championship clubs after you, when you've been in the England 21 setup in the last 6-7 months, and that's obviously something that he's playing for as well. So it is one of those that, like you say, Brian, it probably feels improbable at this stage, and it is also a question whether the Blues wait, because like I say, it's probably going to take another couple of weeks before Fulham have actually made their mind up about him, whether they want to keep him, involve him, loan him out, or then potentially even sell him. I think the sale would probably be if they wanted to go and sign another player, and Stansfield is one of their assets they could potentially let go or whatever. But do Blues wait, or do Blues go and sign an alternative in the meantime?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. If you can be promised that Jay Stansfield will come to Blues, albeit at 1 minute before 11 on transfer deadline day, then obviously you wait. But you're just not going to get that guarantee, are you? Fulham are going to be building their squad and populating those attacking positions with players they want, and that will take time. And then it'll be then they'll probably decide. They'll look at their resources, see what they've got. Then they'll decide what's best for themselves and for Jay Stansfield. So. Yeah, I'd love it. Oh, I would absolutely love it. It'd be such a coup, wouldn't it? It really would be a coup to get Stansfield in League One. And, the prospect of Stansfield leading that press would be terrifying, and I think it would be a massive, massive fillip to what Davies is trying to do. And on the pitch and the energy that Stansfield would bring, I think he'd score a bucket load in League One, and him and Alfie May would, they would just have the times of their lives, wouldn't they? Probably not together, maybe together, because we spoke endlessly last season about, is Stansfield a 9 or is he better off the side, or as a 10? And so it is possible that they play in the same side, but not probable, is it really at the moment? No, all praying that we're wrong.
Yeah, I think it is important to add just lastly, Chris Davies did, in response to the question, say that when he analysed Blues and their performances last season, particularly towards the end, Jay Stansfield was far and away the standout player. So he's clearly as in love with him as we are. So hopefully, it can happen. Let's hope. Brian, moving on to other players that are actually in the building, who are still cloudy with a little bit of uncertainty in the final month of the window. Jordan James first. I think we've both said all summer that we can't really see him staying beyond the end of the window. And it does seem like in the last week, interest has ramped up a little bit.
Yeah, there's lots of talk, isn't there? I'm not convinced there's hard numbers yet.
No.
In terms of bids and offers and all the rest of it, there is plenty of talk. So someone's doing some briefing somewhere. But at the moment, it does seem more heat than light, definitely. As you said, though, I think there will be plenty of light at some stage before the transfer window closes. I agree with you. I think JJ will make a step.
Yeah, and Blues are pretty well prepared for that eventuality, aren't they? They've signed Marc Leonard, who is the immediate replacement, to play alongside Paik in midfield. They would then need to go out and probably sign 2 more midfielders, wouldn't they? Because, as we said earlier, Alfie is still a little way back from being able to play matches.
Yeah, it's then whether you want to mess Bielik about and start putting Bielik in there as well. Obviously, Bielik seems to be the number one choice at centre back. It's Bielik plus one, isn't it? Plus one other at the moment. So, but yeah, they would if when JJ goes, I think they would definitely look to bring another one in, 100%. Yeah. Obviously, which brings us on to Paik. I know we want to talk about Paik Seung-ho. Do you get the feeling that it's looking more likely that he stays?
I think so. This is probably going to be another one where we end up with egg on our face. But I feel like if Paik was going to leave, I think he would have gone earlier. I think, given that he stayed this long and has played in all the pre-season games, and he's, let's be honest, he is integral to the way that Blues are going to play under Chris Davies, and has been in all the games in pre-season. I thought he was brilliant, effortlessly brilliant against Walsall in the last game on Saturday. It does on the face of it look like he stays this summer. He's got 2 years remaining on his contract, so Blues have all the cards there. A season in League One, I don't think there are any international tournaments for him to need to get into the South Korea team in the next 12 months. So a season in League One, as long as it is only one season, shouldn't be too detrimental to his international career either.
I mean, him and Bielik, to me, just play League One in their slippers almost. When Blues are in possession, they are going to be so comfortable and have such a responsibility to unlock teams and play through the thirds. But yeah, I mean, Paik in League One is just, I find that slightly mind blowing. Actually, would he be the best player ever to play in League One? I'm sure Leeds, and it's unfair of us to do this to each other now. Leeds must have had some cracking players. Wolves had some very good players when they were down with Kenny Jackett.
Wolves had Bakary Sakho, didn't they? And Leeds had Fabian Delph, I think, for a year. I mean, he Paik, a South Korea international, would be right up there, wouldn't he? A South Korea international at present, because Fabian Delph wasn't playing for England at the time. He was in League One with Leeds. He was probably about 18, 19. Bakary Sakho had only played one season in the Championship. I know Paik's only played half a season, but he has played 15 times or so for South Korea. So he'd be top 5, wouldn't he? Surely
in the conversation. We're setting. I'm probably setting us up for being absolutely ripped to pieces here. But Paik, I'm quietly confident now. Predict nothing in a transfer window, but just feeling that he might still be here in September. We talked about Dembele and the wonderful contribution, training around goal out and nothing. As you said, Davies seems to want him, doesn't he?
He does, and I think it was after the first friendly against Paderborn, I asked Chris Davies about his. Because Dembele wasn't involved, and I asked him about his injury, and he spoke about him and Tyler Roberts, saying they're going to be important players for us, and I feel like he might have meant that literally, as in Dembele does have a role to play, because at that time I think I presume that Dembele would be one that they'd look to get out the door because of the way it all kind of ended last season, and let's face it, he wasn't particularly used or well liked by the managers that ended the season in charge. So yeah, it's been a turnaround, and we're told Dembele has kind of really knuckled down and bought into the way that Chris Davies wants to play. We've seen that evidenced in the training today. It's just if Chris Davies can kind of turn him into a player that does both sides well, because Dembele does one side very well. He doesn't necessarily do the other side that well. So, but then again, if he could do both, and we always say this, if he could do both sides, he would not be playing in League One. Would he? With Dembele's ability on the ball, he'd probably be top end Championship, looking to get into the Premier League like he did with Bournemouth.
Yeah, I just think, if Davis goes with Emil Hansen in the first game, how many games on the bench does Dembele still? Does he maintain that sort of that focus and that buy-in? And they spent money on Hansen, so you would expect Hansen to be getting plenty of game time. That said, there are 60 games, and we said earlier that if you only play half of the games, you still play 30. So it's a good season, isn't it? And there will be injuries. I think there is interest in Dembele. And I don't know if there's anything massively concrete on the table, but clubs are looking at him. It's just a question of which Dembele you're going to get as to whether you'd sell him or not. There'd be times last season where I'd have happily seen Blues cash in. It's just about him being the same guy day in, day out.
Well, if you want to kind of test how he's going to respond in adversity, maybe you do bench him for the first month of the season or the first 3 or 4 games, because then you're getting towards the end of the window, the final week of the window, and if he's responded badly to be on the bench with Hansen playing, then maybe you say, okay, then fair enough, we can try and sell him in this final week or loan him out or something and get him out of the building. But if he responds well and he could potentially force his way into the team. Let's be honest, Siriki Dembele on ability,
of course he could. Would
be in the 11.
Walks into the team probably.
Exactly, he does. I think you've got 2 very different players in Hansen and Dembele. One was probably more reliable, more well drilled in the system. Very very reliable. And Dembele is a little less reliable in the way he'll kind of support his left back, but probably more talented. I've not seen enough of Emil Hansen to probably say that Dembele is more talented, but Dembele is extremely talented in the Championship, let alone League One. So if he's on song, whether it's left wing or even right wing, I know he doesn't really like playing right wing, but he will be in the team.
Yeah, and there will be times, forget about where he is with his with his morale and his confidence. There will be times when Blues have spent 75 minutes peppering a low block, and you just want a Siriki Dembele off the pitch to take that all out of the equation and curl one into the top corner or the bottom corner from outside the box. Because there will be times when the system is negated and you just want Blues to win those moments, and Dembele is probably the one man in the squad to provide those moments above all others. So yeah, absolutely, I can see him having a role.
Yeah.
The other one is Miosi, isn't it? Koji Miosi, been really well used in pre-season, and looks to be playing quite well, I think.
Yeah, very well. Fits into the system so well. Coming off that left-hand side, it's so interesting. Sorry, the right-hand side. It's so interesting how players playing different positions in and out of possession, don't they? Out of possession, Miosi will go into the right-hand side, his normal role as a right winger, but in possession, he is coming inside an awful lot and combining with the midfielders, and it allows, Ethan Laird to bomb on down that right-hand side. And against Walsall, it was actually Miosi taking up that position in central midfield that allowed Jordan James to advance, and we know that's part of his skill set, that running power, and for Miosi to play him in behind and set Alfie May away to score the winning goal there. So, Mioshi's an interesting one because there will be Championship interest. He got 6 goals, 6 assists last year in his first season in England. He did quite well considering Blues got relegated, and I think he was quite consistent over the course of the season, particularly in home matches, not so much away matches. I think there are a couple of other teams in the Championship interested in him at the time Blues signed him, Stoke City being one of them. So it would not surprise me if Blues were tested, but I don't think Blues have to sell unless they've already got a replacement lined up, because they would need to replace Miosi.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, indeed. As a body of work coming off an ACL, Mioshi's first season was very, very creditable, wasn't it? and he's clearly comfortable at Championship level. So yeah, wouldn't be massively surprised if as you say, Blues resolve is tested, and be interesting to know what he's thinking as well. Is to know whether he fancies a trip round League One.
Yeah, there were a couple of whispers at the start of summer that maybe he wouldn't, but in the way that he has played in pre-season, the way that he's bought into Chris Davies' ideas, it's clear that if Miosi is here come and having spoken to Miosi as well, it's clear that if he is here come September 1st, he'll give his all. He's not the sort to sit in the background and sulk that he hasn't got to move somewhere else. He's probably in a different boat to Paik and Bielik, because he's not really got recent international minutes, and Jordan James. He's not really got recent international minutes, as he's played five times for Japan, and I don't think he's played since 2020. So yeah, he's probably not in that conversation. So he probably doesn't need to worry about it from that point of view.
Where are we with Bacuna and Longelo? Quite a few people asking on social media about those. So he seems to have been dragging on quite a while, and I'd have expected both to have gone by now. Yeah,
Bacuna 3 weeks and Longelo probably 2.5 weeks. So the bid was accepted by Sivasspor. Oh God, we're getting on for it's 3.5 weeks, isn't it? So yeah, he obviously held talks with Sivasspor, for whatever reason hasn't signed there yet. I believe there is another club which we think is from Saudi Arabia that are showing interest in Bacuna and are potentially going to sign him ahead of Sivasspor. So that is worth watching. Either way, Bacuna's out the door. He hasn't been training at Blues for 3 weeks plus now. So he's not part of the plans anymore, and he will leave. Longelo as well, not part of the plans, and will leave. I think it's just a question of him wrapping up personal terms with Barnsley, who have had a bid accepted. But yeah, if that hasn't been done, I'm surprised that hasn't been done in 2 weeks since the bid was first accepted. But yeah, these things can drag on. So I'd expect Longelo and Bacuna to leave. It's just a case of where they actually end up.
Yeah, indeed. We should probably wrap it up. But just looking ahead to the final month of the transfer window, probably looking at a 3 or 4. Are we? Do we think more? So still plenty of work to be done.
I think so. A right back definitely to compete with Laird. Obviously, Blues couldn't really rely on Laird, could they, for availability last year? And with 60 games, Ethan Laird's not going to play them all. So another right back is needed. A centre back, which we spoke about earlier, is the most difficult one, I think, because you've already got, if Bielik's your starting centre back, your guaranteed player, then you've got one of Dion Sanderson or Christoph Clara on the bench. Clara's probably going to start the season on the bench. So you can't then go and put another high quality player surely alongside him. You've probably got to have someone, either a younger guy to develop or an older person, an older player, centre back who's probably going to be happy with more of a bit role, playing in the cup competitions and playing in the odd league game. Like we said, if JJ does leave, as we both think he will, they're going to need 2 midfield players, and they are going to need a striker or forward type, which is why they're interested in Stansfield. And then if anyone else leaves, Miosi, they're going to need another winger.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, still lots of moving parts to go.
Yeah.
Think to a world in which Dion could back up Laird as right back. He'd play it very differently though, wouldn't he? Would be the problem.
Yeah, but if we're talking in possession, Blues are going to play with the back three. Alex Cochrane as a left back has got the ability to play higher up as more of a left-sided kind of left wing back, left winger. So it could become a 3 at the back. But then again, I think for that you might need a left-footed centre back. Then again, Lee Buchanan can do that, can't he? So yeah, there's I feel like there's a decent balance to the squad. It just needs fine-tuning. Dion could play right back, to answer the question, because he played there a lot growing up. Played there in under 23s when he was at Wolves, so he could play right back. But yeah, I think Pendleton's not done badly in pre-season, but he seems to have dropped out of the first team picture now. Brandon Keeler's a one. He could play right back. Alfie Chang has done it in the past a little bit, so when he gets fit, he's an option there. But obviously, they will be searching for a more experienced player to compete with Laird.
Brilliant. That wraps it up.
It Alex, does. It does. I just want to give a quick shout out to Betway, who have sponsored our pre-season coverage this year, right the way through. So yeah, they've got all the odds on Blues winning League One, finishing inside the playoffs, getting the automatics. They're the only ones we're looking at the moment. So yeah, get over to them if betting is your thing. But as ever, please do gamble responsibly.
Yep, thank you, Alex. Thank you all for listening. We've got one more friendly to go before the real stuff starts on Saturday week. So it's a big keep right on from both of us.